Yes, Jaya Jabi Jaya Jabi Jaya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, Shiva Prabhupada. Gurudev, Gurudev, Jai Gurudev. Hey, Prabhu. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading today Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 14, Text 13. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchavam Narottamam Devam Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Muhurdayat Nastapasya Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtaki. So I will read the Sanskrit words. Ekadashat Prasangan Nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shrotaha Shakalavad Ubhayato Api Dukalam Prakandam and Abhiyati. Srila Prabhupada's translation. Sometimes to mitigate distress in this forest of the material world, the conditioned soul receives cheap blessings from atheists. He then loses all intelligence in their association. This is exactly like jumping in a shallow river. As a result, one breaks his head. He is not able to mitigate his sufferings from the heat, and in both ways he suffers. The misguided conditioned soul also approaches so-called sadhus and swamis who preach against the principles of the Vedas. He does not receive benefit from them, even in the present or in the future. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Cheaters are always there to manufacture their own way of spiritual realization. To get some material benefit, the conditioned soul approaches those pseudo sannyasi and yogis for cheap blessings, but he does not receive any benefit from them, either spiritual or material. In this age, there are many cheaters who show some jugglery and magic. They even create gold to amaze their followers, and their followers accept them as God. This type of cheating is very prominent in Kali Yuga. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes the real guru in this way. Samsaradava Nadalita Loka Chayana Karina Kanakanatvam Praptasya Karina Kunavasa Gunar Navashya Vande Guru Sri Charanaravita. One should approach a guru who can extinguish the blazing fire of this material world, the struggle for existence. People want to be cheated, and therefore they go to yogis and swamis who play tricks. But tricks do not mitigate the miseries of material life. If being able to manufacture gold is a criterion for becoming God, then why not accept Krishna, the proprietor of the entire universe, wherein there are countless tons of gold? As mentioned before, the color of gold is compared to the will-o'-the-wisp or yellow stew. Therefore, one should not be allured by gold manufacturing gurus, but should sincerely approach a devotee like Jadbart. Jadbart instructed Rahugana Maharaj as well. Jadbart instructed Rahugana Maharaj so well that the king was relieved from the bodily conception. One cannot become happy by accepting a false guru. A guru shall be accepted as advised in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:321. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jignashu shriya uttamam. One should approach a bona fide guru to inquire about the highest benefit of life. Such a guru is described as follows. Shabde para janishnatam. Such a guru does not manufacture gold or juggle words. He is well versed in the conclusion of Vedic knowledge. Vedaishar Savar Aham Eva Vedakrit. He is freed from all material contamination and is fully engaged in Krishna's service. If one is able to obtain the dust of the lotus feet of such a guru, his life becomes successful. Otherwise, he is baffled both in this life and in the next. Om Meganatinirandasya Ganagana Shalakaya Chakshurandalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthavitale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthavitale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Tinamine Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shitatmane, Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti, Bhakti Tirtha Tanamane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari, Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Panchakalpa Turubhyascha, Kripasindubhya Evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. Hare Hare Bol. Good morning, dear devotees. Thank you very much for being here so early in the morning. Lauren, Dasha Prema, Gita Nagra, the cows, Priya Manjari, Leela Kashari Devi. Of course, Dr. Prabhu is here. James, Jasha Dev, Devaki Priti, Ajamil, Parameshwari. Thank you so very much. Krishna is happy. We're all here. It's beautiful Kartik. And we get an opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's jump into this text. Okay, so Maharaj yesterday, Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj gave us such a beautiful, creative way of how we can approach the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I was thinking about, some of the points that he was making yesterday as I was preparing for the class. And when he started his class, he was sharing about how in these verses, we're hearing about the forest of material enjoyment. And so, of course, we know that as aspiring devotees, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we have been given knowledge to understand and sometimes to practically apply the tools of Krishna consciousness, so that we can, in our endeavors to become devotees, mitigate whatever distresses we might experience. However, in this translation, Srila Prabhupada is referring to the distresses of the conditioned souls. And a point that he made continuously in the purport, in this translation, this is there, and also in the purport, is the living entity's natural propensity to look for cheap things. So he explains that the living entities, they're conditioned living entities, they're always trying to find different ways to relieve their distresses. And in this particular verse, two of the ways that the conditioned living entity approach the material world to get help is by accepting blessings from atheists. And then he goes on to speak about false gurus and swamis. Now, Prabhupada makes this point about cheap. They get cheap blessings. So when we think of that word cheap, in the secular dictionary, that word is described as depreciating in value. When something is cheap, it's the value of it has been minimized. When something is cheap, it's actually inferior in quality. So it's not worth so much. And generally, it's received with little effort. So if we look at the text and we explore a little bit about the meaning of how Srila Prabhupada is presenting this first part of the translation, that when conditioned souls are suffering, they look for something, but what they're looking for is already depreciated in value. It's already inferior. And so as a result of that, naturally, people will not get any relief from their distresses, not much relief. And so he explains that they lose their intelligence when they approach these different cheap ways of trying to find relief. So I'm kind of focusing on this word cheap because Prabhupada says that of all the four propensities of the human beings, all those four propensities that that kind of keep us really connected in this material world is these propensities of being illusioned, the propensity to commit mistakes, the propensity to have imperfect knowledge, and the propensity to cheat. And he explains to us that that propensity to cheat is most prominent. So, and the reason this is such a prominent aspect of the way that people keep that samsara cycle going is because that propensity to cheat, it actually gives us, it fulfills our nature to control in this material world, to lord it over this material world, as your prophet explains. So when we try to do that, or when the conditioned souls try to do that, of course, as Prabhupada said, they lose their intelligence. And specifically, he's mentioning in this purport that they lose their intelligence in the association of atheists. Now, atheistic philosophy has been around, it's in the Vedas. There are many people that propagated philosophy. And it's not like it's new. Although in America, when we look at some of the statistics about atheistic people, there's a statistic that explains that the people in America, just in America, Europe it's even more, that that propensity to associate with atheists, or that propensity to be an atheist, has increased 4% over the last 3 or 4 years. I think they did the study in 2017, and now we're in 2023. So yeah, so at that time, I think it's something like, if I remember correctly, something like 57-60% of an increase in this mentality of atheism. And this mentality of atheism is kind of like a society in itself. So, there's the people that practices this philosophy of atheism, they have compartmental places of worship in terms of atheism, compartmental understanding of how to address the material world with all the different nuances in the material world. So they have like a society. There's actually atheistic society in America, and as I said, more in Europe. So I wanted to explore a little bit about what Prabhupada says about atheism and atheistic mentality, because he's referring to when conditions so associate with this kind of mentality, they lose their intelligence. He explains that, first of all, as we know, and also those persons that are practitioners of atheism, they do not believe in the essence of God. Their belief is that everything is happening in our daily affairs and is just due to physical arrangement and chance. So they don't accept that there's a God. And this philosophy, atheism, as we said, it's actually there in the Vedas, and there's been a lot of conflict over how that has been practiced in ancient India. And this theme of atheism was really propounded in Greece. And so it's something that, requires a little attention, not so much. But anyway, if people have this propensity to cheat, and atheism is cheating, then that's one of the ways that the conditioned souls are getting sucked into this cycle of samsara, which is quite unfortunate for the conditioned living entities. Prabhupada says that atheists, they don't believe in the injunctions of the Vedas. According to them, all the Vedic injunctions are simply theories that have no practical application in life. And he says, he says, unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, everyone is an atheist. And I thought, wow, that's a strong statement. Of course, we understand that it is only, as he goes on in the purport to explain, by the mercy of the spiritual master, that one can be, get some awareness about how not to be an atheist in Kali Yuga. He said in Kali Yuga, most people, they don't even believe in God. What to speak of following his words? So that's what an atheist is. They think everything is just going on, as Prabhupada said, physical arrangement and chance. And then he shares with us that the most dangerous aspect of understanding this atheistic philosophy is understand the Mayavad theory. And that was, of course, given to us by Shankaracharya. And I remember when we were studying, we're still studying this Chaitanya Charitamrita with Devaki Priti as the main facilitator of that study. And I remember in one of the Athiests, in the beginning, the Athiests, there was just so much information about the Shankaracharya and this philosophy. There's a lot of emphasis that was placed on us understanding, the Mayavad theory, because it's created such havoc in our world, because they give that theory that God is impersonal. And so that's an atheistic theory. And it doesn't follow the injunctions of the Vedas, of course. So this Vedic this atheistic understanding is very dangerous, very detrimental, especially for people that have the cheating propensity in the material world. And it's, as devotees, one of our foremost principle is to be compassionate. That's why, Prabhupada wrote these books, and that's why devotees, give so much of their time to doing find so many different ways to reach the conditioned souls. So I was thinking in terms of compassion, how unfortunate it is for the conditioned souls, because the modes of material nature is so intense. So every aspect of the modes of material nature has some foundation of atheistic understanding in within the modes. And so the conditioned souls, it's very challenging to live in the world without an awareness of who they are and who's God. That's why this mood of compassion, when we read these verses, is so really important, because it gives us an impetus to understand why it is important for us to reach out to the conditioned souls, because it almost appears like the prison house that conditioned souls are in, that it's almost impossible to get out. Of course, it is possible by the mercy of a devotee, and that's the compassion when we hear these verses, is to incite that mood of, wow, people need help, people need support. How do we do that as devotees? And of course, there's so many ways, and devotees are just so what's the word? They're so innovative and so creative. Like how Maharaj yesterday was coming. He was sharing with us the way that he was, the way he wrote that story. That's just such a creative and such a genius way of presenting our philosophy to help a class of people that can hear in that way. So this requires so much compassion. Lord Chaitanya, he explains that the Mayavads, they're the greatest philosophers. They're the greatest offenders. They're the greatest offenders. Their philosophy is very offensive to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so that's why they are considered atheists, because according to the Vedic system, a person that doesn't follow this understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're called an atheist. And yeah, Lord Chaitanya, there's so much emphasis on Lord Chaitanya when he spoke about Shankaracharya, when he expressed, even the Buddhist theology. There's some emphasis about the Buddhist theology and how all of these have a foundation in atheism. And so for the devotees that are really absorbed in understanding the philosophy to share with others, this is such a beautiful way to explore Lord Chaitanya's teachings on atheism and how people are considered atheistic. And once again, I know I'm talking about Krishna Shrisha a lot because I was just so I was so grateful actually to hear from him yesterday. He is actually an expert in understanding the nuances of our philosophy. He spent a lot of time, given a lot of years to studying and being a scholar, such an amazing Oxford scholar in understanding the deeper aspects of our philosophy. So in that way, I'm like a little novice and just trying to learn a little bit and trying to understand and begging for mercy to share just a bit, a tip of whatever I can understand. So I'm not going to focus so much on that because once again, I'm just really wanting to share how there's so many different ways that's arranged in this material world for people to get cheated. So when these people get cheated, Prabhupada says it's like in the translation, it's like jumping in a shallow river. And we all know what that's like. A shallow river doesn't have enough water. So when you jump in it, then certainly, as he said, it breaks our head. And so Srila Prabhupada is just so clear. And I was remembering a pastime. Of course, this is a little different, but I just shared this pastime for visual because the outcome of this pastime is much different than the outcome of a materialist. So I remember being in Mayapur one year and all of us had gone to the Ganga. And one of the things that devotees love to do in the Ganga is just kind of jump in the Ganga. And sometimes devotees we are not always trained in how to jump in the Ganga, how to go into the Ganga. So there was a devotee that was very enthusiastic. And I remember this person jumped in the Ganga, not going in with the feet as we're trained by Srila Prabhupada, walk in the Ganga, you put water Ganga on your head, not like that. He kind of jumped in like he was diving in a swimming pool, and all we could see was blood, in the top on the waters, and he died actually because of kind of not having not being aware. Not awareness is such an important thing of how to approach the holy rivers. Now, for that devotee, he's a devotee. I don't know what level of devotee he was, but certainly he got, I'm sure, a better situation. For the materialists, when they accept atheistic philosophy and they accept, as Prabhupada will share in a little bit about these different swamis and sadhus, when they accept that, it's like jumping in a place in a river where there's not sufficient water and breaking their head. And then he says in both ways they suffer in both ways. So that suffering, of course, it comes from just following a path, a religious path that's not authorized, and also, of course, the pain of having to hit their head. They don't know that by following, they have no awareness that by following this path of atheism or these different ways that they're going to get cheated, that there is a hell that's awaiting them. And I'm sure we're going to come to those different hellish places as we go on in Srimad Bhagavatam. But there's a specific hell as people have become more godless, that and they take more of this atheistic mentality. That's specifically for them. I think that hell, and I won't go into the whole understanding of that hell, but if anybody's interested in learning about that hell, is called Asi Patravana, some kind of hellish planet where people get some kind of different suffering. Anyway, the last point that's made in the translation is the misguided soul. They also approach these so-called swamis and sadhus, and of course, there's nothing benefit. There's no benefit from that. Prabhupada says that in this age, everyone is described as manda sumanda, manda sumanda mataha. People have no spiritual culture, and so they're fallen. So most people are fallen. So most people fit into this category, unfortunately, of either following atheistic people, following people that these so-called swamis and sadhus, and just not getting proper knowledge, proper information about how to get out of the cycle of birth and death. So there's a nice story I remember. I don't remember all the details of that story, but I always, when I read Bhagavatam, I like to learn about, well, how did that come about? Like, where did this whole propensity for atheistic mentality, where did that come from? Like, what's the origin of it? What's the history? And sometimes I can get that information and sometimes not. And that's where Krishna Sesha Prabhu is very expert, because he's spent so much of his life studying that. However, I did remember doing a class a few months ago about Indra, and learning a little bit about how he was kind of one of those persons that propagated this cheating mentality of swamis and being, a false swami, or being a false sadhu. And of course, this is in the Bhagavatam. It's in the fourth canto of Bhagavatam. And so the translation, I'll just share the translation of that verse. I remember it says, then the great hero Vijitashva, the son of King Prithu, again took the horse. So this is a whole story about this horse sacrifice, and returned to his father's sacrificial arena. Since that time, certain men with poor fund of knowledge has adopted the dress of a false sannyasi. It was King Indra who introduced this. So as the story goes, there's this Prithu's doing this horse sacrifice, and of course Indra being envious because Prithu had already done 100 of them, and now Indra is envious of that, and he wants to be he's the controller, so he wants to do more than Prithu. So he dresses as a sannyasi to steal the horse, and of course he was seen by one of the demigods. And so this Prabhupada says in that story, of course, the end of the part of the story that was really beautiful is that Prithu's son, I believe it was Prithu's son, was able to get the horse back from Indra, but it was a whole thing. He was disguised as this sadhu, and so Prabhupada, in that purport, he says this cheating was very foolishly introduced by King Indra. In some ages, such cheating is very prominent, and in other ages, not so prominent. So it's prominent in Kali Yuga for sure. It is the duty of a sannyasi to be very cautious, because as stated by Lord Chaitanya, sannyasira alpachida sarvalokegai, a little spot in a sannyasi's character will be magnified by the public. And certainly we have seen that. That's in the Vraja-Lila. Therefore, unless one is very sincere and serious, he should not take up the order of sannyas. The point that I wanted to make about this is that it began somewhere, this mentality of cheating swamis, and that's from our own dear Indra. He's very dear. He's an amazing devotee, right? He's one of Krishna's representatives. Prabhupada then goes on to speak a little bit about this mood of cheating sannyasis and swamis that the conditioned souls get enamored by. He said Prabhupada says one should not use this order as a means to cheat the public. And we know people still do. There's still many cheating sadhus all over the world, not just in India. They're all over. Because they also come in the guise of atheists. It is better not to take up sannyas in this age of Kali because provocations are very strong in this age. Only a very exalted person, advanced in spiritual understanding, should attempt to take up sannyas. One should not adopt this order as a means of livelihood for some material purpose. There are many, many that do. Again, that's part of, the misfortune of what Indra did with King Prithu. The saffron dress worn by a sannyasi announces to the world that he has renounced all worldly affairs and is simply engaged in the service of the Lord. Such a devotee is actually a sannyasi or liberated person. Of course, this is in the Bhagavad Gita. It explains anasrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiya na sannyasi na yogi cha na niragnir chachakriyaha. One who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who work as he's obligated is in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no work. So in our culture, in our ISKCON culture, our sannyasis are very engaged in the service of bringing awareness and bringing awareness of the knowledge of the Vedic scriptures in its pure state to the conditioned souls. So the sannyasis in the Vedic culture are not in Vaishnava sannyasis, because some sannyasis can say they're in Vedic culture. Vaishnava sannyasis are significant. There's a significantly different understanding than the swamis that are cheating the people in general. Although sometimes, as we've seen in Indra, some things can happen with even someone that's a Vaishnava sannyasi. The last point that Prabhupada helps us to understand is the importance of the guru. He quotes that verse, Samsara Davana Lila Loka, because, okay, conditioned souls, they're in distress, because they follow atheistic people. Atheistic people have no belief in God. They also get kind of enamored by the swamis and the sadhus because they can do all these supposedly wonderful things. Prabhupada goes on to talk about how they can do all this jugglery and, but that's what usually attracts people. And he explains that one needs to approach a bona fide spiritual master. One should approach a guru who can extinguish the blazing fire of this material world, this fire of existence. And how do we understand that? He tells us, well, by just reading this pastime of how Jad Bharat instructed Rahugana Maharaj to understand that he's not the body. And Rahugana Maharaj was such an amazing disciple. He accepted that teaching from Jad Bharat, and he immediately did something differently, immediately changed the behavior that he was having. So, Prabhupada says one has to understand what is a guru, what is a real guru, and accept a guru. Then he quotes from the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, 11.321, that translation says, therefore, any person who seriously desires real happiness. So what's the opposite of distress? Is happiness. So everyone is looking also for happiness. Unfortunately, without knowledge, what they receive, what the conditioned soul receives, what the conditioned souls receive is distress. However, because they're looking for happiness, the only way to receive happiness is to approach a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of that bona fide spiritual master. That bona fide spiritual master has qualifications, and one of the qualifications is that he has realized the conclusion of the scriptures, and he's able to convince others of this conclusion. And such great personalities who have taken shelter of the Supreme Lord, they put aside all material considerations And those are who can be considered bona fide spiritual master. There's one point that Prabhupada made about a bona fide spiritual master that really caught my attention. This is in the purport. He says that, in other words, the bona fide spiritual master is one who has retired from the glittering illusions of materialistic society, friendship, and love. And so I want to share just something I was reading. I'm presently trying to learn more about Srila Prabhupada as I approach my last days in this body, meaning that I don't know when I can leave this body, so I'm trying to understand more about Srila Prabhupada. So I was reading this book. It's called Srila Prabhupada Smaranam, and there's this beautiful message for all of us that I appreciated so much from His Holiness Satsarup Maharaj. So he writes, quite short, we sit or kneel and look reverently to our spiritual master. This was Boston in 1971. We believe everything he says. We do whatever he asks. He knows he has us under his control. That's for Krishna, of course. We are young disciples in awe of Srila Prabhupada. He takes the responsibility of guiding our lives. He has taken our karma. He is grateful that we are submissive, but he wants us to be much more competent and organized and preach more effectively in Krishna consciousness. We are passive and await his command. We have shaven our heads and we wear Eastern Vaishnav clothing. We have given up our American identities, but we are still very much American and recently taken on the life of followers of Lord Chaitanya. He knows we are trying our best, and yet we're not capable of much. We can chant on our beads, but it's difficult to control the mind. We don't know the esoteric truths of Krishna consciousness. We chant loudly on the streets of Boston, and he's very much proud of us for that. We're learning how to distribute Back to Godhead magazine, 25 cents for 25 cents. But we haven't learned yet how to sell his big books. Just imagine. This is, I read that and I think of Vaisheshika Prabhu, just how he has been empowered by Srila Prabhupada. We are at a sweet early point in our relationship. It is growing to where we will be able to take more responsibilities. And he is grateful for what we are doing now. And so in order for us to become free, in order for us to help others to become free, those persons that have not had the mercy that we have had, it is important for us to be grateful to give Krishna consciousness to others. And this is what is most pleasing to the bona fide spiritual master. So, yeah, this is what will help us, help the conditioned souls to become free from this cheating propensity that can engulf us like monsters and make us become victims in this material world. Thank you so very much. Hare Krishna. So, yeah, if you have some comments or some takeaways, I like takeaways. Oh, be greatly appreciated. Haribo, looks like I'm not here. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mother Vraja-Lila. That was very nice.
Oh, okay.
Very important subject matter, and you treated it very well. I appreciate that. Great subject matter for me to contemplate throughout the day. You've given me much to think about, so I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo. So I'd like to invite some more takeaways. That helps me to understand that you got maybe one thing from what was shared today. Okay, I'm gonna ask a few people. Leela, are you in a place where you can share? You can write it in the chat. Oh, we got 10 things in the chat. Okay, let's see. Lauren, thank you so much for being here. Okay. So, no one has anything to take away.
I have a takeaway. I have a
All
whole bunch of
right.
takeaways. I'm still digesting.
Okay.
But one of the early takeaways for me was that you have to be careful about jumping into bodies of water. Um, it's an analogy, but it's true any way you look at it. We have to be careful about where we get our guidance in Krishna consciousness, and so process in Krishna consciousness is that before taking initiation, we have to examine the quality of a prospective spiritual master and ensure that this is someone that we can place our faith in. And the spiritual master similarly tests the disciple to see that the disciple is genuinely qualified. And also, we have to be careful about actually jumping into bodies of water. I also in Mayapur, is it Mayapur? No, I'm sorry, it was in Vrindavan. Someone was jumping in the Jamuna. There was a devotee who jumped in the Jamuna and broke his neck. He survived, but he he was completely paralyzed henceforward. It was very, very tragic. So we have to be careful about taking blind leaps. You have to know what you're getting yourself into, or you're setting yourself up for trouble. So anyway, that's one of my takeaways.
Yes, thank you. That's why this whole chapter is so important, because there's so much emphasis on why not to jump in those places that we don't know anything about. Jad Bharat, instructing Maharaj Rahuganath. I mean, this whole chapter is just filled with why not? Don't do it. Don't go there. So yes, thank you so much, Dr. Prabhu. And I see Parameshwari. Thank you so much, Mother Vraja-Lila. I'm grateful. A lot of us, I appreciate how you like to connect the dots when you study Bhagavatam, and the story of how King Indra put on the cloth of a sannyasi and how that manifests in the cheating mentality of people in Kali Yuga. Yes. Thank you, Parameshwar. Yeah, because, as Prabhupada says, everyone is a cheater in Kali Yuga. And even as we aspire to become devotees, we might still have some propensities for cheating. And so it's important, for us, at least for me, to understand, how am I cheating myself? How am I cheating myself? Every day I can ask myself that question. How am I cheating myself today? Ashadev agrees with me. Yeah.
I was actually raising my hand, if I
in the
may.
beginning of the class. Oh, okay. All right, Prabhu. Thank you. I'm so grateful. Yes, we love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. You read about the importance of finding a spiritual master, and of course we read it on every other page of Srila Prabhupada's books, but there aren't very many to go around, and I feel like this is a problem as someone who's often trying to get people into Krishna consciousness. Even they're reading all the time, you should find a spiritual master, find a spiritual master. And the question always is, well, where are they? What are we going to do about this? Mataji. I think this is one of the main things that's
Well,
hindering our growth.
you're
Is that
you're a
in the
spiritual
last
you're a
30
spiritual
years,
master.
we've only had about the same number of spiritual masters for like the last 30 or 40 years. What are we supposed to do about this?
Well,
Your
actually, the number
thoughts? I just need I just
the
need a little encouragement from you that
number
this problem will be resolved. Sorry, go ahead.
Yesterday, Prabhu, you are a spiritual master, right? Because you know that there are spiritual masters that are Diksha spiritual masters according to tradition, and they're Shiksha spiritual masters. And actually, so Prabhupada says Shiksha spiritual masters can be as or even more important than a Diksha spiritual master. So you are doing what a spiritual master does, right? You are giving the conclusion of the scriptures to others. And you are living a life that is, although engaged in family life, is an example. There are many, many spiritual masters that are grihastas, and we see that coming a little bit more and more. So to have a stamp to say we are a spiritual master is not necessarily what a spiritual master is. However, a spiritual master is someone that is exemplary in their character. Prabhupada says that, right? Whatever a great man does, common men follow, all the world pursue. And so that's your example. So when we read the scriptures and we hear about the spiritual master, of course, this is the theoretical, philosophical understanding, but that does have to be put into practicality. And we see that practicality. It's unfortunate sometimes it's unfortunate that we tend to only want to respect someone that has been labeled or stamped spiritual masters. Sometimes that's quite unfortunate, because then when something happens, then someone becomes devastated, and then they even leave the institution, they leave the society. They become devastated in their understanding of Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada, he says everybody should become guru. Now, as far as how many more gurus have been added, I do think in the last 10 years, there have been a little bit more added, Prabhu. Yeah. And I mean, there, at least I know of at least, 20 new gurus, seriously, at least 20 within the last 10 years. So to have the title of guru is one thing. To be a guru is another thing. And in my eyes, and I'm sure in quite a lot of other people, you're a guru. Is that okay?
I appreciate your kind encouragement, but I think you know what I'm really getting at here is that if we want people to go to the next level in their bhakti, they need a bona fide spiritual master, and we just don't have enough moving around. And I just wonder how are we expected to spread the Krishna consciousness movement when there's just so few initiating gurus. It's such a bottleneck.
They're
I
over
experience it all the time.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah,
all
there's over
overextended.
100.
We got a dozen gurus, with 10,000 disciples, and we should have 10,000 gurus with a dozen disciples. You know what I mean? Then we could actually facilitate everyone's spiritual growth in the world. That's my opinion.
It's interesting to note that in our ISKCON organization, the way it's set up is a guru can make a guru. A guru can designate someone to be a guru. For example, I remember when my spiritual master was leaving, he was very concerned about who would care for Africa, because there wasn't any specific. Kavi Chandra Maharaj, he was there. However, my spiritual master knew that Africa needed some gurus that were indigenous Africans. And so I remember in his dying bed, he said, we got to have some gurus. And so Japataka Maharaj jumped forward and he said, I'm going to initiate them as gurus. And he did. He initiated right away, like I think 4 of them, 4 of the devotees that had some qualification. Today they're gurus. One of them have so many disciples, you know. So I believe that there's something in ISKCON that we tend to shy away from, and it's called activism. So there are few devotees that are being active with these kinds of themes, and it needs to be brought to the GBC, our governing body commission, and they need to find people that are that are qualified and give them the label of guru. But it's, you know, yeah, just that label might make a difference. However, if someone is acting in that capacity through sincerity and purity, then they are guru, and they may not have to have that stamp. You know, like there's so many women that are gurus in our institution, and yet they have not been able to get that stamp. And they do have disciples. They have many disciples. So it's kind of, as you said, it's a topic that needs to be addressed, and we need some persons that are ready for activism. They're ready to act with that topic, with that theme. Are you one of them, Yashadev? It sounds like you are. So that's the next step. Let's approach our spiritual master, His Holiness Devi Amrita Swami, and ask him. He's a GBC. Activism. I think Leela Kishore says, thank you for the class. How sad that atheism's on the rise. Yes, we have been hearing about the hopelessness of life under the lash of Maya for many classes. If people do not find some way to have a consciousness of God, there is nothing for them to believe in or strive for. How very sad. Also, definitely look before you leap. Finally, we should chant publicly as much as possible, loudly, quietly. Just chant Mahamantra and bring Krishna in the world. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that, Leela. Yes, you know, there's a book that I remember in the very beginning of my Krishna consciousness that I read that I've always stuck with me in the earlier years. And it's a book by His Holiness Satsvarup Maharaj. I always liked his writings. And the book is Vaishnava Compassion. You know, he approaches looking at the people in the material world in that mood of compassion, being compassionate. Unfortunately, it's not so easy for us to have that mood of compassion if we don't have that mood with ourselves. If we're not compassionate with ourselves, it's definitely not easy to look in the world and see how sad. But Prahlad Maharaj, he's such an example for us. You know, he prays for the conditioned souls. You know, so yeah, it is sad. Yesterday Maharaj says philosophy, it can also reflect emotions. So certainly there is that emotion of sadness when we think about the conditions of the conditioned souls. And we have the tools to make a difference, which is what's really wonderful. So amazing for us that we've been blessed. And then Yashadev, he said, no, I'm not. That's the problem. Yashadev, then you got to appoint someone. You got to delegate. Find somebody that's ready to be active, be an activist in our movement. We need so many more of those. There's so many different aspects of how things are run, you know, in our institution that needs people with voices to speak out loud. So find someone that maybe you can delegate that to. Devaki Priti, thank you, Mata. A lot of things for me to reflect on. I would like to ask you, what's one thing, Devaki Priti? I know the time is gone. Okay. You know, I always hear this. Thank you for a nice class. Thank you for a nice class. Not I, everyone says that. Thank you for a nice class. Well, what's nice about the class? I remember one time I used to always say to devotees, I'm grateful. You know, I'm grateful. And actually, Krishna sent that to me in my heart when devotees used to come to me after my spiritual master left his body and ask me, how are you? How are you feeling? And I used to get so distressed when they would come to me in those early years when he left, because I didn't know what to say. I couldn't express my feelings, you know. And so I remember like praying, Krishna, how do I didn't even want to see devotees. I was in Mayapur actually. I didn't want to see devotees because I knew they would stop me and ask me. So I prayed to Krishna, Krishna, please help me. I got to find something to say to these devotees that will just stop them from asking me this. And I actually heard that, you know, just tell them you're grateful. Just say you're grateful. And so I started saying that to everyone that would ask me, how are you? Well, and I'm like, you know, inside I'm, you know, having all these different emotions. However, I would just say, oh, I'm grateful. And then one time, Malati Devi, she said to me, okay, I know you're grateful, but what are you grateful for? And so I started learning and expressing what I'm grateful for. In the same way, when I hear devotees say, that's a nice class, I'm like, okay, what was nice about it? What did you hear that can make a difference for you? Because the nice class is Srila Prabhupada. He's the one that's given us these translations, these purports. That's the nice class. What someone shares is what can make a difference from the realizations they receive from Srila Prabhupada. So yeah, thank you, always encouraging us to reflect more. It's only because I'm learning how to practice that with myself. I'm learning to become more thoughtful, more introspective, more reflective, more expressive, more kind and compassionate with myself. And this way, I'm trying to learn how to say that in ways that can be pleasing. That's one of the things I learned from Satsuru Maharaj in his book on chanting. He says, we must learn to speak truths that are pleasing. So my truth right now today that I'm praying to deliver to you that's pleasing is, what did you get from the class? What's your takeaway? So thank you so very much. Thank you. Okay, Asha Dave, we're gonna try to find we're gonna delegate. Yeah. You know, this is a thing. We need people to be willing to speak out and take action. I remember one time speaking to a guru about something that was really distressing for me. And I remember him saying to me, what are you going to do about it? Okay, what are you going to do about it? And then I realized, okay, first I had to have the willingness to do something about it. And then I did. I did do something about it. And actually something came out of it and it made a difference in his life. So it does take a willingness. Okay, Devaki Priti, she says, I was appreciating the importance of following the process of devotional service through the guru and also the importance of having a voice in helping ISKCON. Yes, we need voices. Yes. And, you know, we're depending on all of you that are coming now, you know, bringing this mood of creativity to our institution. We need your creative voice. We need to make a difference. We do. We have the blueprint. Hare Krishna, dear Prabhus. It's 8:07. I was told I'm supposed to end at 7:45. They're devotees. Okay, so what do I do now, Yashodaya Prabhu? I can leave, or you stay for reading? Is that what happens? Tarka Prabhu, Yashodaya Prabhu?
You can feel free to end at any time. I don't know if we're gonna, looks like we're not gonna have darshan. It would have happened already, so you can just terminate the Zoom at any time you feel like doing that. Or if you want to continue with the conversation, you can do that too, since there is not darshan.
Yeah, I want to respect everyone's time. I know like people always have different things to do. I also do. So I want to thank everyone very much. Thank you, dear devotees, for your association from Devaki Priti. Yes. Thank you, Yasha Dave. Thank you, Lauren, for being here. Lauren, my sweetheart. Thank you so much. Dasha Prema Prabhu, thank you. Thank you, the cows, the cowherd boys in the barn. Thank you, Priya Manjari, Ajamil Prabhu. Thank you so much. Parameshwari, Jagannath Pandit, Shaima Goparupa, and of course, our dear Devaki Priti. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful, wonderful day. And remember to run after Krishna. Hari Hari Bol.